Celis, you know, when you walked in, I hope you had that wow factor, because usually when people walk in, they're like, oh my God, this is so different than anything else. You know, a lot of the breweries, they have just their community tables, it's just a different setting. But with us, you know, when you walk in, we want to give you the perception of, oh wow, I'm just walking in the old world. It's a brewery with a lot of stories. So, but we do have a very interesting story. It's also a little bit of a long story, so hopefully y'all are going to be patient enough, and I promise it's going to be interesting. So, my dad, who knows anything about the Celis story, by the way? Nobody. All right, that's going to be interesting.
We heard a little bit at Brown. It told us a little bit of the backstory.
And if you have any questions, just ask it. All right. So for me, it's like second nature. So, but anyway, so my dad, he was born in 1925 in Hoogaren, Belgium. Now, Hoogaren is known for one thing, and one thing only. That is a town that would make the Belgian wheat beer. The only town actually in the world that would make Belgian wheat beer. So it happens to be that my dad grew up next to a brewery, and the name was Brewery Thompson. Now the Brewery Thompson was the only brewery in Hoogaren that was making the Belgian wheat beer. Now don't forget, in the old days there was no automation. Everything was done manually. And so since my dad was a teenager, 17 years old, he was always asked to help with the brewery to help brew beer. So as of 17 years old, think about that. He was learning how to make wheat beer. How cool is that? So as time progresses, the brewer, Mr. Thompson, decided on retiring, and that was in 1956. So that was actually a disaster, and the reason is that the brewery shut down. There was no more wheat beer being brewed. So now people are like, great, what are we going to drink now? You know, and so they had to go and drink lagers, pilsners. It's not what they wanted, because they wanted to have that authentic wheat beer from Hoogaren. So, so my dad's friends, they were pushing him like, come on, Pierre, I mean, we know you learned how to brew the wheat beer. Why don't you just start a brewery? Yeah, it's easier said than done, right? So my dad didn't have any money, and he's like, well, you know, I'll have to find a loan somewhere, maybe from some friends or whatever, or maybe, you know, wherever I can, what I can find. But he said, why don't you come to the house? I have still some beer from the neighbor, and we'll talk about it. So they came over, they tasted they had a beer, they're like, oh, see, Pierre, how good this is, you know, you should try to make the beer, get a brewery going, and this and that. It's like, actually, since you said it, the beer's so good, this is the beer that I actually brewed. And they're like, well, wait a minute, you just said this was from the neighbors. Like, of course I'm gonna say it's from the neighbors. I did that as a home brew. And I wanted to make sure that you tell me the truth if the beer is good, yes or no. Now I know it is. So what he did is he bought an old mash tun from 1914. And I'll show you, when we go back over there, I'm gonna show you the pictures. He bought an open mash tun in 1914. He bought 2 copper kettles from the late 1800s. A cool ship, a open fermenter, and all of that. So he was up and running in 1965. That's when he revived the Belgian wheat beer. And of course, you know, the whole town was just cheering, like, yeah, here we are, getting it back. Sales was just doing phenomenal. He outgrew his small little brewery. And in '79, he bought that on the other side of Hoogaren. And don't forget, Hoogaren is small, 5,000 people. So you can imagine how tiny that is. So, but he bought another building and converted that into a state-of-the-art brewery. So then in 1980, at that time he was already exporting to the US as well. So in 1985, my parents, they were on a tour in the US, and I had to call them that the fire had destroyed half of the brewery, and which was devastating, you know. So my dad said, okay, I'll be home as soon as I can, and we'll get this brewery rebuilt. So when he got into Hoogaren, he's like, oh my God, I mean, I did not anticipate it that bad. The problem was too that all the money that he made, he always had to back in the brewery, and because he was always so busy, he never signed a renewal for the insurance company. So that means that, guess what? Yeah, the insurance gives you pretty much a middle finger. You know, so now all of a sudden you have to find a way to rebuild this brewery. So at that time, Interbrew, which is now InBev, they approached them. They said, listen, you know, we know that you want to rebuild this brewery. We know also that you are actually cash strapped. So let's make a partnership and we will rebuild this brewery. Now, for my dad, it was really important to rebuild this brewery because he wanted to make sure that he gave people that worked with him since day one to give them their job back, to make sure they could care for their family and all of that. And he wanted to continue also. I mean, he worked so hard to revive the wheat beer. He wanted to make sure that that would continue. So we got a partnership with InBev, or Interbrew. And then in 1989, he retired. He was 65 years old. Now, what do you think when people say, oh, I'm gonna retire? Yeah, you think, oh, they're gonna lay in the sun, make trips, whatever. For him, it was like, hey, Christine, you wanna go with me to Austin and build another brewery? That was his form of retirement. I'm like, yes, of course. You know, I was ready to get out of Hogarth. So we bought, he bought land in 1990, 91 construction, and 92 we were up and running with the very first craft brewery in Texas. Now, Shiner is a different animal, but we had the very first small craft brewery in Texas. And so we could know, I mean, we were doing so well. I mean, people were excited about it. People could visit the brewery. Lots of people have never visited the brewery. We had some copper kettles that we brought over from Belgium as well. One of them is actually the one that when you walked in the mash tun. So then in 95, we could no longer follow demand. We were doing, in 2.5 years, we were doing 23,000 barrels. And distributors had to wait months before they would get another shipload of beer. And at that time, that Miller approached us and said, let's make a partnership. We know you can't follow demand anymore. You know, Budweiser, they just bought Whitmer, they just bought Red Hook, and they're going to make the breweries much more efficient and give them growth. So we want to do the same thing with you. So we thought like, well, maybe that's a really good idea. Well, that was a little bit different. Things didn't work out so well. So it was just a difference in priorities. So we sold the brewery then to Miller in the year 2000, and they shut it down in 2001. And they had the fastest growing craft brewery in the US. And because I still have that article from USA Today, the fastest growing craft brewery, and they had an icon, I mean, a person that revived a beer style, and they did not see the value, unfortunately. So the brewery was shut down. They sold the trademark and the equipment to Michigan Brewing Company. And then they were brewing cellars over there. We had nothing to do with it. And then they went bankrupt in 2011. Everything was then on the auction block. Then somebody else out of South Carolina, they bought the trademark. The equipment just was sold all over, and a junkyard person, well, I don't know how you say that, if there is a name for it, a term. So they bought actually the Copper Brew House. So that was placed at a junkyard in Ohio, and all of a sudden, so now then the Celis was contract brewed in Connecticut. So if you can imagine, it goes from Austin to Michigan to Connecticut. It's like, ugh, lots of story here. And then in 2011, though, my dad then unfortunately passed away. And he and I, we always thought, we want to continue this legacy. But unfortunately, that never happened. So he passed away. And then I was so determined to start this brewery again. At that time, my daughter had told me too that she wanted to be a brewer. I wanted to bring back the brewery to Austin. For me, it was like, I want to give back the very first brewery to Texas or to Austin. And for whatever reason, in 2016, the stars aligned and I found the right investors. we found this building, so about the building. I had my dad's original recipes already. I had the yeast strain, and I'm going to tell you also in a minute what we did with the yeast strain. So I had the original yeast strain, and then found one of the copper kettles in a junkyard in Ohio. So we bought it, brought it over here, anchored it, not going to go anywhere anymore. If you really think about it, so the copper brew house came from Belgium to Austin to Michigan to Ohio, and now back over here. And it's not one of those things that you can put on in the back of your truck. It ain't gonna fit in there, trust me. So, and then last year in February, I was able to buy my name back. So now everything was just full circle. So, you know, if you really think about it, I mean, I got a chance again to continue this legacy. And my dad, I mean, he was such an icon. He really embraced all this. He was one of the trendsetters of craft beer or craft breweries here in Austin or in Texas. So real ale, they came and I mean, Brad came always to the brewery and learned. Brock von St. Arnold. So he did a lot to improve and to establish a craft beer scene here in Texas. So I'm really, really grateful. So, I mean, there's so much excitement about that. You know, when we launched, I mean, everybody was super excited, like, finally, y'all are back. So then, you know, remember I was gonna say something about the yeast. So the first time, you know, when we came over here, my dad smuggled the yeast strain in a little vial, and he put that in his socks, and that's how he actually came in here, because it's a live organism. It's illegal to really bring that in. But that was prior 9/11, so they wouldn't check, you know. So, and then last time, or in 2017, after we had our yeast propagation up and running, now the thing was, how am I going to bring this over here? Forget about the socks. You got to take off your shoes to go through it. I mean, you get checked from head to toe, as we all know. So what we did is we put the, you know, there's those wine boxes, and in the wine box is those bladders with wine in, right? So what we decided on putting the yeast strain in the bladder and then put it in a wine box and then brought it in. So when they looked at it, it seemed like, oh well, you know, it's just wine. So they probably thought, those stupid Belgians, they don't even know they have great beer. They have to bring their wine from Belgium, for example. So anyway, so that's how we got it smuggled in. And when we opened it, I mean, the yeast was so stressed out. And how do you know the yeast is stressed out? Because it smells like rotten eggs. So what you do is you give it wort, actually. And so you sugar water, basically, and that's nutrients for the yeast. Honestly, I think I was more stressed about the yeast than the yeast itself. But anyway, we have it. So, and there's only 2 breweries in the world that have that yeast. That is the Whole Garden Brewery, of course, and then us. So, yay. Anyway, so what we're doing is also we're brewing the original recipes from my dad, and we're going to continue that. We're going to be also very innovative and make some other beers. So, any questions so far? I know there's a lot of dates, there's a lot of information, but it's such a compelling story with a lot of challenges and the ups and downs and all of that. But you know what? Persistency always wins, right? If you are determined, you get there. So does anybody have any questions?
Why Austin?
Good question. I forgot. I always forget about that one. When we were exporting to the U.S., my dad would come on a regular basis to Austin because his main importer was located here. So he was, you know, he always is very observant. He saw that there was no craft brewery in Austin. There was, in Austin you have what? UT. You have young people. What do? They go out and party. And then one main thing is that the water is similar than in Hogarden. It is filtered through limestone, so you're going to have a lot of calcium in the water, which is necessary for the wheat beer. And then my dad always said at the end, well, and they speak slowly, so I can understand them in Texas, because my dad never learned any English. He was 65 years old. You don't need English in Belgium. So he's like, okay, I can understand what they say. So that's one of the reasons too. Yeah. Yeah. So